Good evening and welcome to the Daily News Roundup. I am Abigail Smythe. Among the stories in this evening's newscast, approximately 7,000 students remain absent from schools. Statistics show 75% reduction in murders under recent states of public emergency. Police on the hunt for gunmen who attempted to hijack a truck and shot the driver in the process. Education Minister says not enough space available in local early childhood sector to accommodate all children aged 0 to 6. Man who murdered drinking partner sentenced to life in prison. In business, American donut company Krispy Kreme coming to Jamaica. In the region, Guyanese may soon be able to travel visa-free to Canada. Further overseas, supervisors in San Francisco vote to give city police ability to use potentially lethal remote-controlled robots. And in sports, Germany suffer second consecutive World Cup group stage exit, while Japan pull off another historic upset. Now for the news in detail. Education Minister Favour Williams says there's not nearly enough space available in the local early childhood sector to accommodate all children aged 0 to 6 years old. Minister Williams says there are only about 4,000 spaces, while there are some 105,000 children currently in that age group. She says the government is working to build out the necessary spaces and find trained teachers to work with the students. She also notes that children usually start school at age 3, as is required by law. However, Minister Williams says there is a thrust to have children stimulated at a much younger age. And Acting Director of Safety and Security at the Ministry of Education, Richard Troop, says despite the ministry's efforts, approximately 7,000 students remain absent from the classroom. The ministry launched its Yard-to-Yard Find the Child initiative as a means to return some 120,000 students to the classroom who were displaced due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Mr. Troop says the number, which remains unaccounted for, is made up mostly of senior students who've opted not to return to school for economic reasons. The school safety and security head says an app has been developed which will help in engaging more students. However, he notes that an issue has also been identified regarding poor attendance among a significant number of the school population, which has been re-engaged to the education system. The police have launched a manhunt for gunmen who attempted to hijack a truck transporting goods along the Bustamante Highway in Clarendon early Thursday morning. The 50-year-old driver was shot and has been hospitalized. Investigators say shortly after 3 a.m., the driver exited a warehouse in Old Harbour, St. Catherine, with a truckload of wine and other beverages destined for an all-inclusive hotel in Westmoreland. Sometime later, he observed that his truck was being trailed by a Toyota Probox motor car. Upon reaching the Bustamante Highway, the car drove up beside the truck and the occupants opened fire, hitting the driver in the right shoulder. The wounded truck driver tried to elude the gunmen during a high-speed chase. It is understood that the driver used the truck to ram the Probox when the men attempted to overtake his vehicle. Both vehicles crashed. It is reported that one of the gunmen again opened fire on the truck driver, this time hitting him in the left shoulder. The wounded driver played dead while the attackers worked on their damaged vehicle. It is further reported that a passing motorist stopped to assist and called the fire brigade as the injured driver was pinned in the cab of the truck. The motorist then assisted the men in the Probox to remove their vehicle from under the rear of the truck, not knowing they were gunmen. The hoodlums then sped away from the scene. Firefighters later arrived on the scene and removed the wounded driver from the wreckage. According to the Jamaica Constabulary Force, its statistics show that there was a 75% reduction in murders over the period of the states of public emergency SOEs. The SOEs, which ended on Tuesday, were imposed in 7 parishes: Clarendon, St. Catherine, sections of Kingston and St. Andrew, Hanover, St. James, and Westmoreland. In the 2 weeks before the SOEs, 36 murders were recorded. 30 of the recorded homicides were in the 7 SOE parishes. In the 7 days leading up to the SOEs, 27 murders were recorded. 21 of those were in the SOE declared parishes and police divisions. The SOEs were declared on November 15 and lasted for only the initial 14 days. In the first 7 days of the SOEs, the constabulary recorded 12 murders. 5 of the recorded homicides were in the SOE parishes and police divisions. In the second week of the SOE, a total of 10 murders were recorded. The SOE parishes accounted for 6 of the 10 murders. Prime Minister Andrew Holness says the government may declare another SOE under new advice and if the circumstances change. He is also maintaining that the SOEs are effective. A man who shot and stabbed his drinking partner to death in St. Mary in 2017 to avoid paying him $200,000 for a head injury was sentenced to life in prison Tuesday morning. The 36-year-old convict, Bastien Gillespie, will serve 27 years before being eligible for parole. The vicious killer murdered the victim, who he had previously chopped in his head because he did not want to pay him the money for fracturing his skull. Gillespie had chopped the man in his head in a dispute over $20 in 2016. 26-year-old Theodore James, otherwise called Theo, of Bagnold Spring in the parish, was murdered a day before he was to attend a mediation session with Gillespie. The St. Mary shoemaker and father of 4 at the time was charged with wounding with intent in connection with the chopping incident with James and was before the parish court. In handing down the sentence in the Home Circuit Court, Justice Simone Wolfe-Rees also gave the killer 5 years for illegal possession of firearm and 1 year for illegal possession of ammunition. The sentences are to run concurrently. Gillespie pleaded guilty to the offenses in the St. Mary Circuit Court in July. According to the facts of the case, James left home for work on the morning of the incident and did not return to his premises that night. Sometime later that night, his mother, Hortense Barrett Gordon, heard several gunshots nearby and the following morning discovered that it was her son who was killed. James's body was found along a riverbank with multiple stab wounds to the neck, chest, and shoulder areas. A gunshot wound was also observed on his body. According to one of the 2 Crown witnesses who had accompanied Gillespie on the day of the murder, Gillespie had threatened to kill James even though he continued to support Gillespie's shop after the chopping incident and would often sit and drink rum with him. Dwayne Mills says he was present one day at Gillespie's shop when James came to make a purchase, and after James left, Gillespie said, quote, "You know, said a boy if he dead," end quote. The witness says although he encouraged him to, quote, "low out that," end quote, he would repeatedly remark, quote, "Time of the master, I just timed the things," end quote. According to the other witness, Patrick Hilton, on the day of the incident, Gillespie waited for James, chased him, and shot him as he begged for his life. The witness says James, while being chased, fell into a gully. He further states that following the incident, Gillespie ran to where he was and handed him the gun and went back in the direction where James's voice was heard. He says Gillespie, who remained there for only 5 minutes, on his return said, quote, "Mission accomplished," end quote. Mills says Gillespie told him, quote, "about million stab me game," end quote. The 2 witnesses were also charged with misprision of felony and were previously sentenced after they pleaded guilty under a plea deal. Misprision of a felony is a crime that occurs when someone knows a felony has been committed but fails to inform the authorities. In the meantime, Assistant Director of Public Prosecutions, Celine Gilvey, who prosecuted the matter with Crown Counsel Vanessa Campbell, lauded the police investigator, Detective Corporal Levan Lyle, of the Port Moriah Police Station, who she said did a stellar investigation into the matter. The Spanish Town Police have charged the Homestead resident who attacked media workers in St. Catherine on Wednesday, damaging a videographer's equipment. Michael Marlin, a laborer, has been charged with assault occasioning bodily harm and malicious destruction of property. The attack on the TVJ videographer and a Gleaner reporter took place as the journalists covered a protest by teachers at the Homestead Primary School. Video footage showed the man advancing on the cameraman man while hurling expletives and threats. His court date has not been finalized. Both the Press Association of Jamaica and the Media Association of Jamaica have condemned the incident. Justice Minister Delroy Chuck says bus and taxi operators who wish to have a payment plan for outstanding traffic tickets must take the matter to the traffic court and not the government. Last month, several transport stakeholders submitted a proposal to Transport Minister Audley Shaw on a new payment plan for outstanding traffic tickets. However, Minister Chuck says that should be done at the court. He says the government has no intention to interfere with the rule of law. He adds that night courts are being considered to facilitate drivers with unpaid tickets. The Justice Minister further urges drivers to use the online modality to clear their outstanding tickets and not burden the courts. Legislation will soon be coming requiring households to properly separate and sort their solid waste. Prime Minister Andrew Holness made the announcement at a handing over ceremony of 50 compactor trucks to the National Solid Waste Management Authority on Wednesday. Mr. Holness notes that while the country works toward improving its efficiency in managing waste, there is still a need for Jamaicans to practice appropriate waste disposal. The Prime Minister points to the Japanese as a good model to emulate in terms of a culture of responsible waste management. He says a new culture of cleanliness needs to be built in the country. In the meantime, Finance Minister Dr. Nigel Clark says another 50 compactor trucks have been budgeted for in the next fiscal year. And some good news for us all. There will be long holiday weekends over the Christmas and New Year. The Ministry of Labour and Social Security has advised that the Holiday Act provides that whenever Christmas Day falls on a Sunday, then the Monday, December 26, and the Tuesday, December 27, are to be observed as public general holidays. Consequently, the public is being advised that as Christmas Day falls on a Sunday this year, Monday, December 26, 2022, and Tuesday, December 27, 2022, will be observed as public general holidays. Similarly, the ministry says as New Year's Day falls on a Sunday, Monday, January 2, 2023, will be observed as a public general holiday. And in business news, American donut company Krispy Kreme is coming to Jamaica. It is to open its first shop in Kingston by the end of the first quarter of 2023 after signing a franchise deal with Restaurant Associates Limited. The Hot Light Theatre shop will be located at the intersection of Waterloo Road and Hope Road. Restaurant Associates Limited says it intends to open 2 more Krispy Kreme shops in Kingston. And news in the region, Guyanese may soon be able to travel visa-free to Canada. The governments of Guyana and Canada are holding discussions to remove the visa requirement for Guyanese. Canadian High Commissioner Mark Berman made the disclosure during a reception for a Canadian trade delegation in Georgetown. Guyanese citizens have a visa-free or visa-on-arrival access to 88 countries and territories. The United Kingdom recently removed its visa requirement for Guyanese travelers wishing to stay in the country for up to 6 months once they meet specific requirements, which include having access to enough funds to support their stay. On the international scene, supervisors in San Francisco voted on Tuesday to give city police the ability to use potentially lethal remote-controlled robots in emergency situations. The vote was 8-3, with the majority agreeing to grant police the option despite strong objections from civil liberties and other police oversight groups. Opponents say the authority would lead to the further militaristic of a police force already too aggressive with poor and minority communities. The San Francisco Police Department says it does not have pre-armed robots and has no plans to arm robots with guns. However, the department could deploy robots equipped with explosive charges to contact, incapacitate, or disorient violent, armed, or a dangerous suspect when lives are at stake. And in sports, in Thursday's World Cup fixtures, Germany suffered a second consecutive World Cup group stage exit despite a thrilling 4-2 win over Costa Rica. Meanwhile, Japan pulled off another historic World Cup upset as a hugely controversial goal saw them come from behind to beat Spain 2-1 and claim top spot in Group E, with Spain needing goal difference to advance as runners-up ahead of Germany. And in cricket, Australia took a grip on the first test in Perth on Friday, with Pat Cummins bagging his 200th wicket as they bowled out a resolute West Indies, then piled on more runs to stretch their lead to a commanding 344. West Indies were dismissed for 283 in the final session on day 3 after the hosts declared their first innings at 598 for 4. The West Indies have not won a test on Australian soil in 25 years. And that's it for your news roundup for today and for this week. I am Abigail Smythe. See you next time.